Okay, well, we're at a minute after, and I see people are still coming in, but welcome to our continuing webinar series, the 2022 version. Today, we're going to focus on the Ironworker Certified Rigger and Signal Person program. And I'm Kevin Hilton, I'm the CEO of Impact, and today we're fortunate enough to have Lee Worley, the Executive Director of the Ironworker Apprenticeship and Training Department. Lee, as most of you know, is a subject matter expert when it comes to all aspects of craft training, registered and accredited apprenticeship programs. And today, we're super excited to have him talk about a new program designed to make the ironworkers and their contractors the go-to choice when it comes to rigging projects throughout the construction industry. But before we turn it over to Lee, I want to hit a few housekeeping items. The first is, you see down in the middle of your screen, at the bottom of the screen, you have the participants, the chat, the share screen, and the Q&A. We only monitor the Q&A button. So we're going to have a lot of questions, I'm sure. We'll keep our eye on that. And if there's a really pressing question, we'll interrupt Lee and have him direct it. But rest assured, all of your questions are going to be answered on this webinar. If for some reason you have a question afterwards, Lee's going to share his contact information. You can email him or call him, and he's happy to talk to you. We'll post this recorded webinar on the Impact and Ironworker website at the latest tomorrow. Probably will be up there sometime today. And the slides that Lee's going to share as part of his presentation are going to be uploaded there as well. Lee's going to have formal comments for maybe 30 or 40 minutes, and then we'll get into the Q&As. But ask as many questions as you possibly can. They'll go into the Q&A, and we'll have that. If for some reason you want to be anonymous and ask something offline, that's fine. But if you want to make sure that your specific question gets answered, by all means, identify yourself when you do the Q&A and use that option. And I would be very remiss if I did not invite you to register very soon. The registration isn't up yet, but it'll be up in the next couple of days for the Impact Annual Conference scheduled for February 12th through the 15th in New Orleans, Louisiana. Now, there's two added bonuses to the Impact Annual Conference. First, on Sunday, February 12th, you will attend the greatest Super Bowl party you've ever attended in your life, and you're going to have an absolute blast. But that's not all. On the 14th, you'll be able to spend your best time with all of your loved ones at the Impact Annual Conference. You'll be exactly where you want to be on Valentine's Day. So how could it possibly get better than that? So look very soon for an email announcing that the registration is wide open. We have one hell of an agenda packed for you. So at this point, let me ask Lee a question. Lee, why did you and your colleagues choose to go in this direction in creating this certification program?
I guess it got on my radar probably around 2008, 2009 when I was the Pacific Northwest Regional Director of Apprenticeship. I remember sitting in the trust meetings, the RB meetings actually, and having different locals request some funding to pay for their third-party rigging certification. And I remember even back then going, hey, what the heck is this? Why do we need a certification when it's not required by OSHA? Very, very few projects needed it. But it's been on my mind since probably around 2008. And then when I got appointed to be the executive director and relocated to DC, as I started building my staff over the next couple of years after that, we started hearing spots around the country where just was required. Not a lot of interest around the country, not a lot of people were requesting it or asking about it, but enough that it was always on my radar. And so we started to go down that path. And if you're ready, Kevin, I can just start sharing my screen and kind of go through this and kind of answer some of the questions you have and maybe some of the participants.
You know, right before we get going, and maybe it's already in your notes here, Lee, if you keep in mind how our new certification program stacks up against the NCCCO throughout the presentation, I think that would be very instructive, particularly to our contractors.
I'm going to head down that path, Kevin. So if you're ready, I'll start sharing the screen. I'm sharing the screen. Okay, here we go. So like I said, it got on my radar around 2008, 2009. I get to headquarters in 2011. My staff and I were starting hearing just pockets around the country that were asking us about the certification. No one is knocking down our door, breaking down our door, demanding this, but it slowly crept up on us where it was a pain in our neck, probably around 2016. Whereas in 2017, I approached the National Fund trustees and talked about, hey, this is happening. I'm hearing different parts of the country where our members are having to get this third-party rigging and signal person certification. It's costing them money. It may or may not be portable. I'm thinking about going down this road. So in 2017, I've got the approval by the trustees, and we started going down this path. We put together a certification board, and I'm the chairman, and we have Pete Hayes as the secretary of the committee from Red Cedar Steel. Kendall Martin, one of our vice presidents in the organization and district council president for the Mid-Atlantic states. We have Bill Brown, Ideal Construction and co-chair Impact. And just so you know, all these people have rigging backgrounds, except for our public member, and I'll get into that in a second. Then we reached out, Jason Corder came on a couple of years ago when the original, one of the original committee members retired, Marvin Ragsdale. Jason came on board. He was the longtime apprenticeship coordinator for Las Vegas, Local 416-4033, strong rigging background, strong apprenticeship background, and he joined my staff a couple of years ago. Then we reached out, we thought we should have some professionals on the board, and we reached out to Barnhart Crane and talked to Matt Lanham, and Matt joined us. And that's a real good experienced board, knowledgeable board. And then because we are accredited, and I'll get into the accreditation process, we needed a public member. And we chose Dr. Jerry Wazinski from the University of North Texas. Dr. Wazinski is familiar with the ironworkers. He's been around the trade since the mid-'80s, different trades. And he's always been and somebody that we've always admired and looked up to over the years. And the public member basically keeps the committee honest. So we can't drive we couldn't go down a certain road just to benefit us or the contractor. It has to be what's best for rigging and signal person. So Jerry keeps us honest, and part of it is we named a certification director. Russ Geschwin was the initial certification director who retired a year ago. And we brought on Brian Tannehill. He also works for my department, the Apprenticeship and Training Department in DC. He was a longtime coordinator out of Tulsa. Smart, knowledgeable man, travels the country with the rest of my crew, teaching various subjects, and rigging is one of them. He also handles the EPRI rigging, which is the electrical utility rigging certification. So Brian, very knowledgeable and handles a lot of the day-to-day duties for the board. So like I said, not a lot of people were requiring it over the years, and it got on our radar, got on our scope. It started to be a pain in my neck. So we put together a board. We hired a third party, NOCTI, which is NOCTI Business Solutions, which is they offer expert professional testing services and technical skills assessment. So even though we have subject matter experts put this together, we needed a professional company to drive us through what's right for the industry. We researched and formed, like I said, a subject matter expert committee, which is made up of ironworker contractors and professional riggers. NOCTI got involved. We had a rigging class. Okay, NOCTI got involved, whereas our subject matter experts developed hundreds and hundreds of test questions for the written exam. NOCTI narrowed it down, found out what was best for the written or for the practical part. and the written part. We had a rigging class at our instructor conference in Michigan a few years ago take the pilot exam. And after that pilot exam, NOCTI took the test scores, trimmed down what they thought were good or maybe not as good questions, threw them out of the test bank, and then we finalized our written exam. So we're not just a bunch of iron workers throwing this together. We're not just a bunch of iron workers and a public member do what we feel is best. We are accredited by a third party, and we're doing what's best for the industry, we feel. So why we did it, we've had a qualified rigger and signal person program for years, and it was a program that I went through as an apprentice in the late 80s. It's a fantastic, I mean, our qualified program probably would exceed most other third-party certifications. So it was a pain in my neck over the years. Why do we have to go down this road as a certification? OSHA doesn't require it, but then again, just the way the industry went down, some of the employers and projects required a certification. Where training, testing, and record keeping were key parts of the certification. About 2010, OSHA enacted standards that required a signal person qualification by a third-party qualifier and state that the riggers must be qualified. And then they interpreted a letter from OSHA that labor management joint apprenticeship programs that train and assess signal person riggers would typically meet that definition for third-party qualified evaluators. But states and municipalities, they required a certification, and that's where we jumped into the game. Just by definition, a true certification requires testing, record keeping, and recertification by a third party. And this has caused many of our members to solicit training and testing from other sources, costing hundreds of dollars to maintain their certification, all without the input from any of us, our organization, our expert riggers and signal person, our expert contractors, our fantastic contractors. So they were taking this exam. We don't know the content. So it might have been a good certification. It probably is. I've never taken an NCCO, but I know through building this with our certification director and our IICE board, we put together something that we think is the best of all third-party certifications in the rigging and signal person industry. So that's why we did it. We feel our certification is better. If you see the card here, we have a front and back picture of the card from one of our IICB members, Jason Quarter. There's pictures on it. It's got the certified rigger, certified signal person logo. It's got General President Dean's signature on it. It's got myself as chairman of the program. It's got the ICE logo on the back of the card, along with the National Fund and the QR code in case any verification is required by the employer or by the owner. Verification is huge as far as training goes. You know, the card is great to have. Unfortunately, some cards, you know, can be fraudulent made up. And I'll give you an example of what the carpenters did probably 10 years ago in New York. They were putting together some fraudulent OSHA cards. And it makes us all look bad no matter who did it, if there's something going on there. So if you're gonna testify and make sure that somebody's got a legitimate card, we feel there's no better verification than going through the home base where they took that exam and the testing process. So we've got our card. Everybody who has earned and passed the test gets this, and it's in our database, et cetera. So in April, so as we started this program in about 2018, as we formed our board and started going down this road, let me tell you, it was a long and enduring process. It wasn't simple. We had a lot of trial and error. But in April of 2021, the National Commission for Certifying Agencies, which is NCCA, granted accreditation to our rigging and signal person certification program. And we demonstrate compliance with the accreditation for ICE, excuse me, which is the Institute for Credentialing Excellence. So NCAA is the accrediting body of ICE, and we feel our third party, we investigated it. We want to make sure that we're on the same level playing field as our competitors. whether it's NCCO or other third-party certifications. So we feel that we're meeting or exceeding what everybody else is doing. I'll never badmouth another third-party certification. I know ours is great, and I know plenty of ironworkers have got the NCCO, and they said it was a tough exam, and it's great. But the problem with that is that they're spending money on this card and renewing the card for some that may or may not be portable. So right now, we're going down that road of trying to meet with contractors around the country for if there's any project designs and requirements that require a certification, that they require an NCCO, that they at least consider us and put us in the job documents. We want to be on that level playing field. So it's basically up to our employers and our contractors, et cetera, to let us know if we meet the same level playing field as them. And if they have any questions, again, I'm going to have my contact at the very end of this. I'd love to have anybody contact me. I'll meet with you personally, whether live or virtual, to talk more in depth about what we're doing. But as I go through here, I want to give you, there's some people on this webinar that have seen this demonstration before, this presentation, and I'm hoping there's quite a few that are new here and do not know about us. So I'm going to kind of give you the ABCs of everything. So the requirements for certification include the following. First of all, I'm going to start that any interested individual should read the application guidelines, which is on our website at ironworkers.org, and complete the application process for the written exam. So again, that's ironworkers.org, and you're going to see it down here at the end of my slides. You got to be a member of the Ironworkers in good standing. You got to comply with the Ironworker Certification Board substance abuse policy. You have to have 6,000 hours of industry-related experience. And from what we've found today, no other third party has anything remotely like this, no work experience. You must have completed and passed the Ironworkers rigging and crane course or equivalent. And you must sign the confidentiality policy and examination rules. So there's a lot of rigging and crane manuals out there. You know, it's not a trade secret. You can go to any library, any trade, they've got their rigging and crane course. We have ours. It was put together by experts in our industry, what we thought. We have them sign the confidentiality policy because we don't want the test secrets out there. This isn't a certification where we want people to say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what you have to study for the test. So when it comes to the practical portion of the exam, it's isolated, you're alone, you have no witnesses, you've got the proctor and the observer, and you've got the testee, and that's it. I do want to go back to the 6,000 hours of industry-related experience. We've searched high and low, and it's funny that you can get a certification without proving that you've got any hands-on experience. And we figure most of our apprenticeship programs have got 68,000 hours of related training. They may or may not, but they're going to have the qualified program no matter what when they graduate, because that's part of our core curriculum, and I'll get in that in a second. But to have the on-the-job hours of rigging-related experience is huge for the application in order to pass this test. Some of the other exams, other third-party exams, I've heard a lot of people say that if you're a good test taker, you could probably read the manuals and pass the written exam. But when it comes to the practical portion, you really have to have that hands-on knowledge in order to prove your competence. And I'll kind of explain what we have in our practical exam here in just a few slides. So here's a photo of our rigging and crane manuals. The Ironworker Rigging and Crane course is just one part of our core curriculum that every apprentice must take and pass. It has 80 hours minimum of training in rigging and cranes. It's got 23 units of instruction where we have written assignments, practical exercises, and unit testing. And then all the apprentices, not only they have to meet the classroom before they get their qualified rigger card or signal person card, they have to have 700 hours minimum of field experience. So we do have apprentices usually in their third or fourth year can attain this qualified card in their apprenticeship. And then this is sort of a path working down toward the actual certification of the 6,000 hours when they become a journeyman. Some of the topics for some of you that may not know what's going on in our test bank. The topics covered are the cones and regs, regulations, crane setup and load charts, rigging components, voice and hand signals, rigging inspection, lifting procedures, hitches, and rigging safety. So when we hired NOCTI at the onset of our program, they wanted to know all the topics that we thought should be covered in the exam, and there were a lot more than this. They narrowed it down. The number of test questions per bullet point was determined by them. Again, everything was determined by a third party for this written exam. And I'm stressing this over and over again because I've heard other programs, not with us, that if you design something for yourself, you're gonna make it easier. And we're certainly not going to do that. This is not a test that you can take over and over and over again until you pass. And I'll kind of get into the testing credentials if you fail and what are the retest aspects of it a little bit later. But these are the topics. We have the practical portion of it. You have to perform the hand and voice signals as part of the exam. After you pass the written exam, then you're eligible for the practical exam. You have to take the written exam first. The portion of the practical part was the voice and hand signals. You have to pass 100%. You cannot get one wrong. And you're going to hear me in a second talk about that's probably the most failed portion of the exam is the hand and voice signal portion. And I'll get back to in a second. You have to inspect the rigging hardware, determine if it meets ANSI safety criteria, and if it doesn't meet it, you have to state why. You have to determine slings and hardware to use for picking a load and various hitch configurations. You got to demonstrate the ability to tie 6 knots. You have to demonstrate the ability to rig and raise and offset load in the level position. And then finally, you have to demonstrate the ability to perform a hook transfer and load inversion. And most of these things, I think I've got them in order. You have to pass each in order to move on. So it's not an easy test. Just because you've been a rigger for 10, 15, 20 years, you cannot come into this exam blind. It is tough. We have a prep course that covers a lot of the material that covers the written exam. We don't give anything away in the practical exam because if you've got the experience as a rigger, you should be able to perform hand and voice signals to the universal design, not area of practice. I'm going to get to that in a second. To recertify, so part of a certification is you got to have recertification requirements. It is designed to measure the continued competence of a rigger and signal person. And like the initial exam, you must meet all the eligibility requirements. So our expiration date is at 5 years and there is no grace period. We recommend that 6 months prior to expiration that you get a hold of us and you start making preparations to take the recertification, which is basically the written exam. And if you fail the written exam, then you have to start all over and take the written and practical portion. So we have, here's a for Ironworkers reference manual. And one of the many things that the apprenticeship training department does best is to develop and maintain up-to-date reference manuals, instructor guides, and student workbooks. My staff often receives emails or phone calls from non-members interested in purchasing, any of our manuals. But the NCCO lists the Ironworker Rigging Manual as a study resource as their certification test. Southern Company says numerous general contractors and subcontractors. But I mean, how great is it to have the NCCO, another third party, advertise and list our rigging manual as a study guide for their certification test. I remember first getting this call probably around 2014, 2015, somebody through our headquarters to say, hey, you got a phone call from a non-member looking to buy one of our reference manuals. And we were pretty time. And I thought, hey, if somebody wants our book, what a better way to sell who we are to anybody who wants it, even if it's our competitor. So we have the NCCO, they endorse us. It's on their rigging website. Get a hold of the ironworkers for their rigging book to study for our exam. I just think that's fantastic.
You know, Lee, if I can butt in, I saw an email that maybe came through your office. I can't remember off the top of my head, it was a number of weeks ago, but it was from an end user, chemical company. Most of their work is based in the Gulf Coast, and they said that they would formally recognize this. And I thought, you know, if you can penetrate that market, that's just fantastic. And so if owners in that neck of the woods and in that realm will recognize this, we can do it universally.
I have a side-by-side comparison email I can send anybody. I should have included this on this presentation, but I didn't. But to go through with our manuals, for those that don't know the ironworkers or are familiar with this, I just want to show that the many, this is a picture of the many covers of our reference manuals. We currently have 27 plus manuals available to our 153 training centers. We have both available on our learning management system, and it's updated as needed by our subject matter experts. So again, we've got, for every reference manual, we have an instructor guide and student workbook that's available, like I said, electronic or hard copy. And we spend, you know, our bookstore here at the Apprenticeship Training Department is pretty much considered a small business. We do well over $1 million worth of business a year in printed materials. But as we start and, you know, accept technology, you know, a lot of the younger generations are using LMS in the schools. They're used to a device. I mean, everybody's got their phone or a laptop or some device in front of them. So we converted all of our training materials to our LMS system. And if they choose to go to the LMS system, it's free. It doesn't cost them anything. You know, like I said, we spend thousands of millions of dollars in printing. And I mean, good gosh, some of the training centers around the country that purchase materials for their apprentices and their journeymen, you know, they're ordering tens and tens of thousands of dollars a year in books, and then they're also paying quite a bit in shipping fees. So resorting to the LMS, there's none of that. All they need is a device and access to it, and there you go. So we're really proud of this. It's updated as needed by subject matter experts around apprenticeship coordinators or ironworkers or contractors, whoever we can get to take a look at what can we do to produce the best reference manuals out there. And then again, finally, why certifications? Why the ironworkers? You know, it's one of the most comprehensive and rigorous rigging and signal certifications available. And we feel it's what's behind the certification that really matters. We've got the credentials just like of every other third party. We're on an equal plan. Feel that we excel in some areas, but I want you to tell us if we're doing that or not. And if we are, please consider us for your project. My contact information is right here. I'd be glad to take any questions today. You can contact me directly by my phone number or my email. You can go to our website, ironworkers.org, training IACB certification, and happy to talk with you, discuss with you, either me or myself or my certification director, Brian Tannehill. In fact, if you talk to anybody in my department at headquarters with me or Brian, Jason Corder, Mike Sampson, James Owens, you're going to get somebody who's got rigging background, who's got the certification, and we're going to help sell our program to you. So Kevin, I can take some questions right now. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
Let you take over.
There's a couple of questions in the queue right now, Lee. One's from Sergio out of local 135 Galveston. He says, in our jurisdiction, the crane companies here, Maxim, Deep South, and Mammut, and Sarens, require NCCCO and the NCCER qualifications, and they wouldn't take our rigging credentials. Will our credential finally be accepted through this program, and who needs to reach out to these contractors?
Well, I've never heard them say they would not accept us, so I'd like to know why. Because the people that we've proposed by comparison, it was a no-brainer. Now, we're still in the selling stage. We're still going around trying to get this, but I haven't heard anybody from that area tell us that we weren't on the level playing field. So I couldn't answer that question.
I think just from a perspective, we know people at Maxim, Deep South. Obviously, Barnhart is brought in. They're one of the biggest rigging barns in the world. But I think a big part of it is I think we have to make some time, Sergio and others, to sit down with these guys and, with Deep South as an example, get down to Baton Rouge and educate them. People think that sales is a dirty thing. The reality is sales, and we'd be selling this program, quite frankly, is education. And being able to show them, Lee will provide the side-by-side and sit down and lay out the side-by-side comparison. But, here's the critical step, and this is why I brought up the Lyndell-Basell issue, is the end user has to accept this. And because all these guys, they work for end users around the world. And when they can go to bat and say this exceeds, and clearly it does, anything else in the industry, and we can prove it, as we can prove all of our training, which is one of our most impressive assets and sales tools, I think it'll be a layup.
Well, one of the biggest issues we're having, Kevin, is we're playing catch up.
Right.
I mean, there's never a requirement by OSHA. It wasn't something that was mandatory throughout the country, just pockets of the country, that areas of our organization needed it. Our qualified program is still the best program out there. We just exceeded it with the certification. So playing catch up in any aspect of anything, you're behind, and we're playing catch up.
Well, and the other piece, just speaking out loud, because we've talked about this extensively, is our training is not questioned in the industry. Lee, you've been to industry events. You presented at industry events. Our competition will say to our face, there's no question that our training and our iron workers are better trained. There's no question about it. It's not questioned. It's a fact. And it's widely accepted as a fact in the industry. The issue that I think too blocks us a lot, and it's I wear this very personally from an impact mantle, is we're all in sales, and we've got to have that ability to educate our contractors and the end users on the value of this. Here's the other piece, and I don't think this was hit on too hard. It costs money to go get the NCCCO certification. Ours is part of our program. This is what you get when you hire a union iron worker. That's pretty impressive. I don't mind saying, and you don't find that anywhere else in the industry. So we got sales in front of us, Sergio. That's very important. When and where will testing and training be available?
We're getting more and more of our training centers across the country set up with a proctor and observers and with equipment. The training centers, in order to be blessed, in order to give the certification, they have to be certified apprenticeship program. They have to be part of the IACB, Ironworker Apprenticeship Certification Program. They got to have a proctor. They got to have observer. So basically, they got to have 1 to 2 people per training center who've taken this, who can go down the steps, and they have to purchase the mock-up, etc. So they can contact myself. They can ask questions through the website, IICB. There's a place for questions, and we'll get back to them. But if they've got a need in their area, all they have to do is go to one of the train-the-trainer programs. The first step is to get the coordinator or the instructor or somebody from a local certified. Now we can go down the steps of getting them to be trained the trainer and put on their own courses.
Beautiful. This is really more of a comment. Says most, like the city of Philadelphia, say the NCCCO or equivalent, but that still requires someone to get to the appropriate offices of the city of Philadelphia or any other organization and educate them that we exceed, but we're certainly equivalent to it. Question from Jeff Norris. Thank you for this information, Lee and Kevin. Has either of your departments I think probably received interest from local unions or contractors based in Canada in this program or similar program? And he said parenthetically, the assessment process. Jeff, I'll say that I scrolled through the attendees to this webinar. There are Canadians on there. I don't know if that answers the question, but Lee, any insight if there's a draw from Canada?
We haven't had any direct draw from Canada, but we developed this for what's best for the industry. And I don't see how they would not want to have a discussion or how they would not want to accept it. So Jeff, if you have any contacts up in your area, please get a hold of me and my staff, and we'll travel wherever we have to get this certification wide north. Absolutely. That's what it's developed for, not just the states.
Right. New York City Department of Buildings requires either 16 or 32 hours of rigging and signal person training if you handle rigging. They recognize the NCCCO currently. It's a given, I think, that the NCCCO is widely recognized, and give credit where credit is due. They get, as like Lee said earlier in the webinar, they got out in front of this early and they went out and sold the hell out of it. How can we go about having them recognize this program? Same answer. And here's another thing that I might add, and this just popped into my head because I know General Vice President Jim Mahoney in the New York District Council, they employ a lobbying firm in New York City and in Albany. This could be done through those firms, and a lot of impact RABs use their regional advisory board funds. As many of you are aware, 20 cents on every dollar that comes to impact goes back to the regions. They use that money, and I know Jim does, for lobbying in their area. I think it's a great use of it, and you get that in the hands of your lobbyists and run it to your state capital or the mayor's office or whatever the case may be. What do you have to add to that, Lee?
Yeah, I think if we get the business managers from the locals in the area that require this, the district council presidents, any professionals to help us sell what we're doing, I think we're doing it. And again, we're playing catch up. And anytime you get in the game late, even though it wasn't a requirement by OSHA years ago, somebody outside like the NCCO, they were smart enough in the mid 2000s to go down this path. And hey, they sold them. They did a great job, but we're playing catch up. We're professional ironworkers, we're professional rigger and signal persons, and I'm sure that we will get there eventually. It's just a matter of time, and we'll do what we can to meet with anybody around the country to sell us.
Yeah. Those are the questions we have right now, but as we close this, and I'll give you a parting shot, Lee, but the reality is, at virtually any ironworker event next week at the apprenticeship competition in Denver, this will be discussed. At the Impact Annual Conference, this will be discussed. Local, regional meetings, district council meetings, this will be discussed. It's, in my opinion, it's incumbent upon us to get to the powers that be, whether it's at a private company, the mayor's office, the governor's office, the state legislature, and drive this thing home. The reality is, Lee and his team have done a spectacular job of getting this. I've seen the certification process. It's difficult and rigorous.
It's a difficult exam.
Oh,
not easy.
God. So, we got something to sell here and really educate the end users about. It can easily be done.
Kevin, let me back up for a second. I didn't elaborate more on the hand signal and voice part of the practical exam. That is the most common failed part of the practical exam. Basically for people using area practice instead of the universal signals. So you have to go by the book during the practical exam. We do have some area practice out there. The West Coast had it when I was in Oregon. We had a little bit, deviated a little bit, not a lot, but enough to fail you on the exam. So you can't come into this exam blind. You have to follow the rules to demonstrate that the crane operator, if you're a boomer, put it this way, Kevin, I had my certification director draft an article for the Ironworker magazine a few months ago. It was on the need for rigging, voice and hand signals, having some sort, everybody going down the universal route. I actually had a couple reach out to me, and this boomer said, hey, I travel the country. And he goes, I appreciate that article because you see, I've seen people from different parts of the country give different signs to the operator that are not the right signs. And they figured it out, and oh my God, heard it all, but it's just difficult for the operator sitting in that chair when he's used to having somebody go by the universal signal and somebody deviates from that. So that was a great article. I shout out to my certification director for drafting that on behalf of the apprenticeship and training department. And again, Kevin, you know this is for the audience here who don't know this, the apprenticeship and training department, my department, and all the local training centers across North America, we spend upwards of $90 million collectively on training. And part of it is rigging and the signal person. It's a lot of money. We take it serious. We have our instructor program in Ann Arbor, Michigan, the third week every year. We just completed our 38th year. I don't know where we'd be without our instructor program. We can't be the best trained ironworkers in the country, in the industry, without top-notch instructors. So shout out to them.
Amen. We pair them up with the best contractors in the world. We got a winning combination.
Absolutely.
So, with that, we look forward to seeing everybody in New Orleans for Super Bowl Sunday and incredible content. Your very own Lee Worley will be there to discuss this program even further. Hopefully we discuss it far and wide and frequently and drive our message and our value add through the industry. Lee, thank you very much for taking time out to do this today. And everybody else, be on the lookout. We have some incredible webinars coming up. Hold on. We got a couple quick questions. Might as well just knock them out while we're here. First of all, thank you, Lee and Kevin, for this information. I apologize. I have been having some time. Is it possible to get a copy of the recording? Oh, good. This is a good housekeeping item. Remember, this recorded webinar will be uploaded onto the Impact and Ironworker websites later today or at the latest tomorrow morning, and the slides will be there too. So thank you for asking that, Camerino. And
Kevin, I don't want to interrupt you, but it's only going to be on the Impact website. I can't.
Okay. No, thank you, Susan. That's fine. And then do the cards currently issued by the ironworkers meet the new criteria, Lee?
Meet the new criteria of?
I guess maybe the old qualification. Was there a qualification card? I should know that.
Well, we have a qualification card, yes. In order to get the certification, you have to be a qualified rigger and complete that program before. So yes, it does.
Hold on, we've got a few more coming in here. Would it be prudent to continue to certify with the NCCCO cert until the Ironworker ICC or IICB cert is accepted locally, rather than have the GC awarded to another trade because we don't have the highest?
Yes.
Cert?
Do what you do to keep ironworkers on the job.
And
yeah.
obviously, and
yeah.
we've got to keep that education process up with our contractors so that they can carry the message to the GC or the owner.
And if we have any of the NCCO people certified on this call, get the Ironworker certification, and then so you got both. So when you go to these job sites, maybe you can help us sell the project or sell the certification to your contractor. So
yeah, absolutely. And then a good way to end this, as Joe Higgs said, go blue. He hopes Michigan has a great football season this year, as do I, Joe. Thank you for adding that. And with that, you guys have a safe, productive afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Thanks again, Lee.
Thanks, Kevin. Bye-bye.